Moment. Okay, so we're recording now. If you would like the recording of this meeting afterwards, you can send me an email to ask for it. I might just send it out to everyone on my email list who attended the meeting, if that's something you guys are interested in. Okay, let me share my screen quickly. Start here and presenter mode. Okay. Can you guys see that? Thumbs up if you can see it. Yeah, okay. I see a hand raised. Just generally, yes, it's visible. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to get started. On this first slide, it's obviously just the title slide. I normally do, not normally, I sometimes run this workshop with my husband, Dr. Ariel Gershon, who is a genetics resident at U of T. He's not going to be here for this meeting because he's watching our children. But just to give you some more context about who I am and how I came into this field, my name is Emily, and my background is actually in English and creative writing. I have a degree, a master's of creative writing from the University of Toronto. And I kind of got into the med and dentistry application editing and interview coaching field through my husband. I helped him write his applications when he applied way back in 2015. And I also kind of started giving interview style advice to some of his colleagues, and then found that I really liked being able to apply my communication skills and editing skills towards helping people achieve what their dream is and their dream careers. And I'm really excited to be here talking to you today. It's been many years since then. And over those years, I've been able to work with around 30 to 50 applicants per year on interview prep, and even more on the editing side. And basically I have a lot of experience editing essays. I've edited probably over 1,000 med application essays in that time. I know what's cliche, what's not cliche, what stands out, what works well. And I've learned a lot from all of that editing work. So I'm happy to share those lessons with you today. All right, so this is kind of a basic agenda of what we'll be covering today. I'm going to talk about some goals of application writing, a basic structure for an admissions essay, and then I'm going to have a short activity that we're going to do together, where basically I've kind of written out a not so good admissions essay for you guys to kind of play editor and think about. We'll talk about what's working and not working about it, and then I'll show you kind of the edited version, or what we'd like to see in an admissions essay. And then we'll do a review of some common mistakes, and then there's time for questions and answers at the end. My students, people in this meeting who have already met with me, that activity is the same activity that we do in our meetings. You've probably seen it. So maybe we'll leave the participation up to the people in this meeting who haven't seen that essay as of yet. Okay, I'm going to skip through this quickly. Obligatory Insta plug. This is my Instagram. It's actually a very old screenshot from 2022, but my Instagram is at EGMedPrep. If you have not come from there, a lot of my prices and information and tips about applications all go up on there if you wanted to follow me over on Instagram. Okay, so before I get into why you should listen to us, I do have some disclaimers about why you should not listen to me or us in this presentation. Number one is rules are just the starting point. So obviously there are always exceptions to every rule. I would say 99% of the time the rules that I'm going to give you will apply, but there are times when it's fair to break those rules. Also, I am just one person and my opinion is just one opinion. So obviously I can't represent the opinions of every single person who could be reading your admissions essays, and there might be someone who disagrees with me or has a different perspective on what these essays should encompass, and that might be the person grading your essay. So just a disclaimer there. Also, the most important one is I don't represent any school's admissions committee. I don't represent any school. I have been on interview panels for med schools before in the past, but that was a long time ago. And also I am not endorsed by anyone. So I'm independent and don't represent any school. The gold standard is always to check with the school. So if you have specific questions about word count on essays, or what can I include this activity on my ABS, should I not include it, all of those specific questions about what schools are looking for, you can always email the school's admissions team and they will get back to you with some feedback. Okay, I am going to do a little bit of an overview of the basics. I know about half of you in this chat or in this meeting are applying this year, and then half of you are not applying this year. Maybe you haven't been able to have a chance to look at the different requirements for different schools as of yet. So I'm just going to do like a quick overview for how essays fit into the whole med or dental school application process. Okay, so when you are applying, I'm going to start with medical school. I think most of you are pre-meds. I know I have a few pre-dent students in the meeting also. The most important metrics for getting into medical school are GPA and MCAT. These are the metrics that open the door for you. You can have the best essay in the world, but if your GPA doesn't meet cutoffs, or if you don't have the MCAT score that is what the school is looking for, your essays won't even get read. So those are the two most important metrics, especially for Canadian schools. There's also the Casper test, which is something that many schools do use when evaluating applicants pre-interview. This is kind of a situational judgment test where you are shown different scenarios in video or text form and asked to respond to them very quickly. McMaster uses the Casper, as does U of Ottawa, a number of other schools. I actually do have a Casper course running. If anyone is interested in that, maybe I'll plug that somewhere at the end of this meeting. We can talk more about that later, but Casper also quite important. Other than Casper, we have essays. So the schools that require essays in Canada, U of T has 3 essays that they're asking you to write this year. There are 2 brief personal essays that are very short. They're 250 words each, where they are giving you specific questions to respond to. Those questions change every year. Actually, a couple of years ago, they had 4 questions. Now they have 2 questions. And there's also an expanded ABS essay. So an essay that is 500 words where you get to expand on any one of your personal experiences and kind of tell the committee more about you through that experience. Western is probably the biggest school in terms of essays, the most essay heavy. They require 8 essays from you plus 1 optional about me essay. I know they say you can have 1 to 2 essays per category. Really, you need 2. So I would say like you need the full 8 essays at least. The about me essay is optional. You can go either way on that one. In those 8 essays, they basically have 4 different categories. We have teamwork and leadership, we have social accountability, there are 2 other ones, and you have to write 2 essays that showcase your ability to kind of exemplify those qualities through activities that you've done. Dalhousie has several essays. Actually, their application deadline is coming up at the beginning of September. There is like a non-maritime essay that's pretty short if you're not a Nova Scotia resident. And there's also 5 other shorter essay questions to submit after you submit your non-maritime statement. If anyone is applying to Dal, you actually don't get to see those questions until after you submit your non-maritime statement and the beginning part of your application. Just a heads up, there are more essays to write. U Alberta has some specific essay questions. Calgary has like 10 essays that you have to write that are all pretty short. But for in-province, for Ontario students, it's mainly just U of T and Western. In terms of essays. And of course, there's the ABS also, which is your autobio sketch, which is kind of like an expanded resume. For dental students, you guys have to do 1 general personal statement, as far as I'm aware. For most of the schools, U of T has a shorter other little essay that you need to write. But generally, it's kind of 1 bigger, all-encompassing personal statement that kind of gets sent out to all of the schools. One other short thing for people who have not or who are planning on applying to the US or might be thinking about applying to the US, they have a bit of a different system. How it works there is you submit a primary application, which is a general personal statement that goes out to all of the schools that you're applying to. And then the schools that want to hear more from you will send you secondary, so specific questions to answer, and those are time-based because it's rolling admission. So you need to get those in rather quickly. And you often get a whole bunch of secondaries all sent at the same time. That happens earlier in the cycle, usually before the Ontario or Canadian essays are due. All of the essays and all of your applications are due at the same time, usually at the beginning of October for Canadian or Ontario schools. And then some of the out-of-province ones have a bit of a different deadline. Okay, so now we're all on the same page of what essays we need to write. Okay, now to get into how to actually write those essays. So an important thing to note is what your application essay should accomplish. This applies to anything you are submitting and writing to an admissions committee, to any university in Canada, and whether that's a personal statement or whether that's a shorter essay for U of T. Basically, these essays should set you apart from other candidates. Nobody should be able to write this essay but you. Your essay, more importantly, should also prove using concrete examples, that's stuff that you've done in the past, why you would be well suited for the role of doctor or medical student. Basically, that is your primary mission with writing these essays. You need to prove that you belong in that school and that you would be a good doctor. Anything else that the question is asking you to do, if the question says like, why do you want to be a doctor? Or tell me about a time when you were empathetic, or AI in medicine, which is one of the U of T questions, or in med admissions, answering that question is also very important. But if you were to only answer that question at face value and not use the question to prove why you would be a good doctor or good dentist or whatever it is that you're applying to, then you are wasting an opportunity to sell yourself to the admissions committee. So this should definitely be an argumentative essay that both answers the question if there is a question, but also, very importantly, proves that you would be a good doctor or dentist. That being said, most people in this chat, probably everyone, has not been a doctor or dentist before. So you can't say that, in my past working at this clinic, I was able to showcase these skills, therefore I will be a good doctor moving forward. What you can do is rely on transferable skills. So talk about a leadership experience that you had in your undergrad, and then argue why that proves that you have the leadership skills that are necessary for medicine. And that's how you're going to make that argument. Okay. Skimming through this a little bit. Okay, the best way to make that argument is through STAR stories. STAR is an acronym, which we'll get into in a minute. Basically, it is a way of telling a story that comes from business realms and communication strategies. It's something that med schools do know about and are not necessarily looking for. You don't have to have a STAR method story in your application essay to be admitted, but it is very helpful for structuring your stories, and it's a great way to make sure that your stories prove that you have a certain quality and are very easy to follow and easily understood and clear. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. The situation is the who, what, when, where of your story. This is something like, in my third year of university, I was elected to be the president of the Mental Health Association at York University. So we're just kind of situating where you are in the story, what year it is, what school you're at, where this activity is happening, basic context. After situation is task. That is, what did you want to accomplish within this story? And it should be geared towards a specific quality that you want to prove. So let's say we're talking about leadership for this story. I want your task to be one leadership initiative that you led or that you needed to accomplish. And you might have done 10 different things as a leader of this club over 4 years. But if you were to just list those things in your essay and not tell a story, number one, it's not going to be very engaging. It's going to be pretty vague and not very detailed. And also, I'm not going to have the proof that you are a good leader. It will read more like a list. So you can kind of list some of your experiences in regards to what you did in this club up front, hypothetical club, or whatever your experience is, but then hone in on one specific task that you wanted to accomplish. So you might say, overall in this club, I was responsible for recruiting new members, leading meetings, electing an executive team. On one occasion, I decided to run an initiative with the goal of raising $10,000 for CAMH through putting on a bake sale at my university. So we're going to hone in on one specific event that you needed to run. If it's a teaching activity, one specific student you taught. If you're patient facing in a hospital, one patient you interacted with. So make it as specific as you possibly can. After the task is action. This is, how did you go about accomplishing that task? It should be about 50% action, 50% divided up between the other letters, roughly. This should be the biggest part of your STAR story. And the way to make this seamless and flow really nicely and sound really good is to think backwards about what's happening at the end of the STAR story, which is, spoiler alert, a connection to medicine, and kind of build in the leadership qualities in this case, or communication, or advocacy, or whatever it is that your story is showing. Think about how a doctor or a dentist might need to be a leader in their practice. What kind of leadership skills or strategies might they employ? And then think about how you were able to employ those strategies in the context of your story, and then write them out that way. So think about, like, if this is a leadership STAR story, what would an ideal leadership STAR story have in it? And how did you showcase those skills? Something like, before even planning this bake sale, I had an executive meeting with my entire team, And I asked my teammates how they hope to contribute to the event and what their goals were. It was really important to me to listen to their perspectives and understand how they could help. Through that meeting, I learned that our treasurer, Maria, actually had a background in graphic design, and she was looking to expand her portfolio. I asked if she'd be willing to do some of the promotional posters for the event, which we could post on social media and around our university. She was more than happy to do so. I also learned that Jim had a cupcake recipe that was passed down from his grandmother. Like, go into as much detail as you can about what you did in terms of your leadership or whatever quality we're talking about, abilities. After action is results. That means, were you successful and how successful were you? So after a month of planning and a week of tabling at my university, my team and I were able to exceed our goal, raising $15,000 for CAMH. After the STAR story, I like to also include, what did you learn from the experience? This is especially important for Western, as they explicitly ask for lessons learned, but also U of T or anything that you submit to any admissions committee ever. Something like, through this experience, I learned that when I'm leading an interdisciplinary team, it's really important that I take the time to understand the unique skills and strengths of each of my team members so I can delegate roles accordingly. So what did you learn about leadership through this story or through this example? And then an explicit connection to medicine or dentistry if you're applying to dentistry. So something like, as a future physician, I will be responsible for leading interdisciplinary health teams, and it's really important that I understand how each member of that team functions so that I can delegate roles accordingly and we can all collaborate towards improved patient care. Something like that. Okay, moving on. This is a spreadsheet that I send out to a lot of my students who are working with me. I use it for interviews a lot, so it's a good way to plan out your STAR stories in advance when you're planning your interview answers. I will do another workshop for interviews later in the cycle. It's a whole other can of worms, but STAR story also applies for that. For essays, I think this way of planning out your stories is a good way of kind of outlining your essays and considering what stories you have and how that might feature in each of your essays. It's especially helpful for Western, where you have like 8 different stories that you have to put into one larger application. So basically what I've listed here are some qualities that are likely to come up in an interview or that you might want to showcase that you have if you're writing a larger personal statement. Think about the activities that you have and how they might fit into these qualities, and then come up with a specific situation, task, action, and result, and a connection to medicine or dentistry for your writing to put into any one of your essays. For U of T, you would definitely want to list the U of T clusters in this category. Western gives you specific qualities that they're looking for, so they make that really easy for you. But just kind of plotting out what stories you have that fit into each category is a good way to plan your essays before you start writing them or before you commit to making everything really nice and flowy in essay form. Yeah, so if anyone wants a copy of the spreadsheet, I can send it out after. Yeah, that works for me. Okay. This is kind of a basic outline for a personal statement. I will go over this mostly for the dental students or pre-dental students in the audience, given that you actually do have to write a personal statement in that form, like a whole personal statement encompassing everything, which you don't really have to do for med unless you're applying to the US or I think just the US. Okay, so if you're writing a full personal statement for your US primaries or for a dental school application, in the first paragraph, I'm looking for your educational background, a statement of intent. So I am writing this essay to express my interest in attending dentistry at, and then a summary of the qualities, skills, and abilities that you're going to talk about in the rest of the essay. And then in each body paragraph, you're basically going to have one STAR story per paragraph where you kind of outline a quality that you have and how you have it through a STAR story. I know a lot of these personal statements have questions phrased as like, why do you want to be a doctor or why do you want to be a dentist? The answer to that question is not simply because I love a combination of art and science or because I had an experience when I was younger, when I was sick, and that was what motivated me to pursue medicine. That can be part of it. But really, especially for Canadian schools, the way I read that question is what makes you well suited for a career in medicine or dentistry? Why should they pick you and not just why do you want them? Of course, you can talk about your motivations if you would like to a little bit, but the basic answer to that question is, if I'm doing this for dentistry, something like through my experience, shadowing dentists, being a patient myself, being able to observe dentists through my research experiences, I've been able to understand that dentistry is a career that perfectly combines advocacy, communication, leadership, list any qualities you want in that part. these are qualities that I've been honing in myself and developing in myself over the course of my undergraduate career and even before that. And once I saw them all present together in dentistry, it became clear to me that this was the career path for me. So it's basically because I have these skills and qualities, and because dentistry or medicine also has these skills and qualities, we're a perfect fit, rather than my grandmother was sick and I saw how the doctors treated her and I realized that was something I wanted to do. The only exception to that rule is for the US. If you're applying to the US, they like that kind of stuff. We can ask questions about that later. I would still strike a balance. So you still want to prove that you would be a good doctor, but you can have a little bit more of that kind of like, what was the inciting incident that drew you to this career path for the US, less for Canada. I know in dentistry, sometimes you submit one personal statement to both places. That is fine. Do the best you can to cater to both, make sure they're both present. Okay. Yeah, and then body paragraphs, 1 star story per paragraph. I'm seeing some things in the chat. I'm just going to open it now to look quickly. Send us, yeah, so people are asking for a copy of the slideshow. Yes, I will send that out as well. I think after this meeting, I'll just, for everyone who was here or signed up for the workshop, I'll just send out a copy of the slides and also the video recording once that's done uploading. Okay, just move this chat around. Okay, we're on to the activity portion of this workshop. So basically what I've done here, just to remind you, is I have written out what we can call an expanded ABS essay for U of T. You can also think of this as a body paragraph in a larger personal statement, or maybe some kind of question that's being submitted to a med school or a dental. I mean, in this case, it's med school, but same things apply to dentistry. I have inserted into this essay a lot of common mistakes that I see applicants make when writing essays like this. So I'm going to put it up on the next slide and read it to you. I want you guys to follow along and play editor. So think about what you like about the essay, what's not working, what you would change. And then afterwards, I'm going to open it up for a discussion. You guys can unmute yourself or type in the chat, anything, any impressions that you have of the essay overall. All right, here we go. Music is a huge passion of mine. I've been playing piano since I was 6 years old. My mother is a concert pianist, and I grew up listening to her play beautiful music in our home. When she immigrated to Canada from Hungary, she couldn't speak any English. She connected to other people through music. When I was younger, I also wanted to be able to connect to people in that way, so I started teaching myself to read sheet music and play by ear. I started teaching piano lessons 3 years ago. Most of my students are under the age of 12, although I have a few older students. I really enjoy being able to pass my love of music on to the next generation. It's very fulfilling to be able to watch my students grasp a new concept or learn how to play a new song. Last summer, we organized a concert for my students. We invited all of their friends and family to the event, which was held at our local community center. My students loved being able to share what they had learned in our lessons with their loved ones. Overall, the event was a success, even though it rained that day and we had to move all of our equipment inside at the last minute. I'm excited to organize another concert event for my students in the future. Okay, I'm opening it up to you guys. You can type in the chat or just unmute yourself. Any impressions about this essay? Anything you would change about it? Anything you like? Okay, in the chat, I see some unnecessary details and fluff. Find a way to connect it to medicine. So absolutely, there's no connection to medicine in this essay at all. I don't know if this person is applying to medicine or to dentistry, or if they are applying to be a music teacher. I definitely need an explicit connection to medicine here. I am hearing unnecessary details. Which details would you omit? Which details would you take out? Type in the chat, you can mute. Yeah, Arshia?
I feel like a lot of like the sentences could be like merged together to kind of get to the point a little bit quicker, because we're like going on like sentence after sentence about the details of like the intricate details of the music, where I think like you could maybe sum up the first like 4 to 5 sentences saying like, after teaching music for the past 3 years and like learning how to like, you know, read notes by myself or like something, I finally like planned a concert for my like team of 12 or like whatever. But I just feel like it's a lot of saying and not like a lot of it is coming through, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm seeing in the chat, the range during the concert doesn't have a clear purpose or mentioning older students. So I think what you're picking up on, and the reason it's hard to decide what you would extract from this essay is because there's a lot going on in here that is like half good, but we're not sure what the point of this essay is. I see a lot of people saying like, we need to get to the point faster. What is the point is the question. And it seems a little disjointed in that we can't decide what the point is, which is why it's hard to take stuff out or decide what we're keeping in, because it's not all geared towards one specific thing. So if I were editing this essay, this whole beginning part about this person's mom immigrating to Canada, I don't care about at all. Her mom is not applying to medicine. She's applying to medicine. I would cut all of that out. I would just start with, the basic situation as quickly as you can possibly get to it. I've been teaching piano for this many years or something like that. Yeah, I'm seeing condense the situation introduction. Absolutely. Okay, anyone else have any other observations? Anything you would change, or if you were editing this? Actually, I'm going to pose the question differently. Do you have enough information here to admit this person to medical school? And what more information would you like? Yes, in the chat, I'm seeing what the person specifically did. So like, yeah, the action part of that star story, maybe to make the concert a success. Absolutely, that would be great. So there are actually 3 interesting things going on in this essay. And if I were editing this essay, I would kind of pull out, taught myself to read sheet music and play by ear. That's great self-directed learning, critical thinking. That could be a whole essay in and of itself. We also have, I teach piano lessons to students, communication, teaching, fantastic, also very relevant to medicine. And we have leading this concert, organizing a concert event, leadership, fantastic, relevant to medicine. But because all 3 of these things are being condensed in this very short space, I actually don't have enough information about any of them to draw conclusions about the applicant. I don't know if they're a good leader or if they're a good critical thinker or if they're a good teacher. I just know that they have done those things and that they enjoy teaching and that they derive pleasure from this activity. What I would like is a full star story about one of these things that showcases not only that they enjoy it, but what do they mean by it's a success? What did they do to make it a success? What leadership skills did they employ? If we're doing it about teaching, one student that they taught, how did they get that student to reach his or her goal? Teaching myself to read sheet music, that was a whole paragraph or essay for even like a critical thinking essay for Western. What steps did you take to teach yourself to read sheet music? Was it reaching out to experts in the field? Was it setting a specific schedule for yourself so you could stick to your goal, clear goal setting, having a good work-life balance? All of these things would be really useful to know and also helpful and relevant to medicine. And maybe through a story like that, I could see that this person is successful in self-directed learning and is able to set a goal for themselves and maintain a positive work-life balance. But I don't get any of that in this essay because too many things are being crammed together. This is a common mistake that I see because it's very tempting to try to get everything that you ever did in an activity into your essay, especially for those Western essays that are a bit longer. And you feel like, oh, I've been in this activity for 4 years. I've done so many things. I want them to know about everything I did because it's all important. It's true that it's all important, but if you try to get it all in that space, you're going to end up kind of diminishing your accomplishments because you won't have the space to expand on any one thing. So pick the best thing, pick one thing, and write a whole story about just that. Yeah, connection to medicine would be great here. Also, one other thing I wanted to point out is the word we here. I don't know who we is, how many people are in that we. Is it one other person? Is it 5 other people? How many people are organizing this concert? This is something I see applicants do when they feel very uncomfortable speaking positively about themselves for essay after essay after essay. You do not usually brag about your accomplishments in this way or talk so positively about yourself in such a formal way. It makes sense that it doesn't feel natural. And I feel like a lot of people revert to that we because it sounds a bit more humble. You're not taking all of that accomplishment or all of the success onto yourself. It ends up actually being less clear because I don't know who we is or what your role was. So it's fair to talk about collaboration. That's definitely a quality that you want to showcase. If you're working in a team, you could say, I worked with a team of 3 other piano teachers. Together, we collaborated to put on a concert event. I was responsible for advertising the event and creating the set list or something like that. So like, what was your specific role and how did you accomplish that role? And then take responsibility or ownership of those positive things. Okay, I'm going to go on to the edited version of this essay now. So what I would be looking for in a good submittable essay. Same thing, I'm going to put it up on the next slide. I will read it with you, and then I'm going to open it up to the chat and to everyone in the meeting to give your thoughts and opinions. All right. Oops. Okay. I've been teaching piano lessons to children and adults for the past 3 years. Through this experience, I've learned how to adapt my tone of voice, teaching techniques, and language to suit students of different educational backgrounds, ages, and abilities. While most of my students identify as neurotypical, recently I taught beginner piano skills to Jack, an 8-year-old boy with ASD. To ensure that Jack felt comfortable in our lessons, I met with him and his parents to learn more about how he processes information and the kind of music he wanted to learn. After learning about Jack's interest in Star Wars, I created customized sheet music, a simplified version of the franchise's signature opening theme for our first class. Because Jack had difficulty focusing for long periods of time, I made sure to schedule stretching breaks into our classes. Every 15 minutes, we would stand up, stretch out our arms, and let out our loudest Chewbacca roars. By the end of the session, Jack had mastered several scales and could easily read music notation. I'm currently helping him develop an original piece that he's very excited to share with his parents. As a doctor, I will be tasked with teaching patients about their diagnoses and treatment plans, and I will have to adapt my tone of voice and teaching techniques to suit their individual needs. I understand that I will often work with neurodiverse patients, and it will be important for me to similarly take the time to speak with them and their families about how they learn best. I hope to use my teaching skills to equip all patients with the information they need to become active agents in their own care. I'm excited to bring the teaching and communication skills that I have learned from my work as a piano teacher into my career as a physician. How do you guys feel about this one? Anything you would change? What's working for you? Type in the chat, can I mute? A lot more clear on what the essay's purpose is. Yeah, so I think that is probably the greatest strength of this essay. We have a clear thesis statement at the beginning, which is I am a good communicator because I can adapt the way I communicate. We then have a star story that backs up that claim. Here's a time when I communicated and I was good at it. Here's how I was good at it, and it was successful because Jack is now able to play piano. And then we have the so what of that story. Why is it important that I'm telling you that I'm a good communicator? Because as a doctor, I will be able to use this skill. So that's kind of the trajectory that I'm looking for every admissions essay that you're writing. Any other thoughts about this one? Much more personal touch, absolutely. So there were some comments last time about the details in that previous essay. Maybe there were too many details or too much fluff. That's both true and not true. So I want your essays to be as detailed as you can possibly get them. One common question I get when running these workshops or when working with applicants is, how do I make my essay stand out? Or, my experiences are kind of the same as everyone else's. I've done hospital volunteering. How can I stand out from everyone else? Yes, other people have done hospital volunteering, but no one else sat with Mrs. Smith when she was crying because she got a cancer diagnosis that she wasn't expecting and spoke with her about her son's violin recital that was coming up to help calm her down. So it's the individual stories, the individual people you worked with that nobody else is going to have in their essays because they didn't meet those people and they didn't have those specific experiences. If you write a generic essay about, like, in my hospital volunteering, I helped doctors write notes and I interacted with patients and I took patients to their room, and you kind of leave it at that, then it's not going to be memorable and it's not going to stand out or kind of exemplify the skills that the schools want you to exemplify. So yes, I want details, but I want details that prove a point or details that support a point. In this case, the Chewbacca roars are memorable. I will remember that when I go on to the next essay. It's immediately evocative, it's visual. I can see that happening. But what's important about that image is that I can see the applicant working to adjust their communication to the student. And I don't need to know that Jack had blonde hair and glasses or, exactly when this happened or, any details to just set the scene. I want the details that will showcase your abilities and kind of back that up. Okay, any other thoughts about this one before I move on? Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, here are some don'ts, things not to do, common mistakes. Don't be negative. This is a big one. Don't be negative about yourself or other people. I often see in application essays there's like an impulse to kind of copy every hero's journey you've ever seen in media ever, where there's like an obstacle to overcome, or that something with this character was not going well at the beginning, then they go through this journey and then they're better at the end. That is great for entertainment, and that's why movies and stories are good. In the essays, I don't need a hero's journey where you start off really bad and then get good. I need a hero's journey where you start off good and then you get even better. So you don't need to say like, I'm a really shy person, I'm not good at communicating. It was very difficult for me to accept negative feedback because I was taking it personally. I find that when people write that, they actually don't feel that way. Like they didn't take the negative criticism too personally. They were actually fine with it, but they just feel like you need to have that trajectory in your story. You don't need to have it. You can just say, I was very thankful for that feedback. I implemented it in these ways. I was able to ask for even more feedback. So don't be negative about yourself for the sake of a story. It's not helpful and it's often not true. And especially don't be negative about other people by saying, this person, like a question, maybe you got a question about like a time you experienced a conflict or something like that somewhere in your essays. Do not put blame on somebody else. Don't say that somebody else was cheating or doing something bad. That is an immediate red flag. Don't be negative about other people. Use we when you can use I, we already talked about. Spend too much time talking about abstract concepts. So this especially applies to those U of T essays where they are asking you kind of abstract questions. What does this quote mean to you? Or what do you think about AI and meta admissions? If you were to spend the whole time talking about just that question and not yourself and abstractly unpacking it, it will not be personal to you and I won't get any information about you. So you kind of have to strike that balance. Make unrealistic analogies. That's true. It's a common mistake I see. Something like, because I was able to solve this problem when I was knitting, I'm going to be a good problem solver in medicine. Usually I see more on the other side where people don't think it's relevant to medicine what they're doing, but I have seen some occasions where people take it too far and say like, because I did A, B, and C, therefore I'm going to be a good surgeon and be able to do surgery. You don't need to go that far. You're not doing surgery yet. Don't use quotations in these essays. This is like a soft rule, but most of the time I don't like it. Meaning like if you're talking about a conversation you had with another person, don't write out the dialogue, just kind of summarize it. Use the word try, like I try to be empathetic, just you were empathetic. Don't blame other people, we kind of talked about. Don't reveal any personal information that you wouldn't tell a patient. This is an important one. I often get asked, what is the boundaries that I shouldn't cross? What can I reveal? What can't I reveal in an admissions essay? What tone should I use? The answer to that is take the tone that you would take as if you were already a doctor or already a dentist speaking to a patient. And if there's something that you wouldn't tell a patient because it would be unprofessional, that shouldn't go in your admissions essay. That includes any like personal medical diagnoses, mental health diagnoses, just like information that's a bit too personal that you wouldn't reveal to a patient, basically. And the tone should be the same. So that balance between like, you want to be personable so you can make a connection with the patient, but also professional so they trust your opinion. Sorry, my kids are screaming in the background. That is the balance that you want to strike. Don't use passive language. This is like a grammar one. The ball was thrown by the boy. That's passive. The boy threw the ball. That's active. Active language prioritizes you as the actor, you as the writer. So I want to know, like, I led the team, not the team was led by me. That's kind of more of a grammar thing. Okay. Sorry, loud in my house. Okay, I'm going to open this up to a Q&A, skipping through all of this. If you have any questions, you can message me in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. I'm going to mute myself while you guys think about it.
I guess one question I had was, I guess the Western essays have a bigger word limit compared to the Toronto ones. So I guess how much do you think we should balance in terms of the Toronto essays from answering the question and making it personal, just because like the word limit is pretty small?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will answer in terms of like this year's U of T questions. It's kind of different based on each one. You're balancing those two priorities, which is answering the question and making it about you. So the way to do that for the quote question about like time to think, time to feel, I kind of read that as tell me about a time that you were empathetic. So you're going to interpret the quote as it relates to a personal experience that you've had that involves empathy, whether that was like a patient you interacted with in a volunteer role or any kind of vulnerable person you interacted with, how did taking the time to feel or empathize with that person help you serve them better? Is how the direction I would take that question in. That is easier to do with the quote question than the AI question. For the AI question, I would think about, like, make sure you're answering the question. I would say about half and half the balance should be answering the question versus your personal experience. And a personal experience you can get into that would either be, if you have any coding experience or AI experience, that's something you could talk about. The other thing is, if you've been a part of any kind of selection committee, if you had to choose anyone to fulfill a role, especially if that's like a patient-facing or vulnerable person-facing role, if you had to choose members of a club or an executive committees of a club, if you are working at a part-time job in a manager role and you had to hire someone new, anything like that, then you can think about how AI could have helped you in that selection process, maybe how it couldn't have been helpful, what you had to do yourself without the AI, what you learned from that experience that you can then transfer to the med admissions process, and maybe make AI more applicable to med admissions or better for med admissions based on what you learned from your personal experience. So basically, what has this experience of selecting someone taught you about what values we should be looking for and how AI can help in that process? Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks so much.
Okay, any other questions? Could you please talk about your Casper course and its structure? Yes, absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so I do have a Casper course running. I usually do about 3 of them per cycle. The August one has already ended. I have one coming up at the beginning of September, and then I will probably do an October one, but not guaranteed yet based on interest. The way it works is it runs for 3 sessions. So there's a session each Tuesday in September for 3 Tuesdays. So it's the 5th, it's the 13th, 19th, something like that. Basically the first 3 Tuesdays in September at 6:30 p.m. EST. Each session is an hour long. In the first session, it's mostly lecture based, so a lot like kind of what this workshop was, where I give you strategies for answering Casper questions, different structures you can use, and kind of go through my approach to Casper. There is one short activity we do within that first session where we do a Casper station together to kind of illustrate some of those different concepts. At the end of that session, I assign homework. So it's about 5 Casper stations for you to do in between classes for the next week. And then in the next session, we kind of take up that homework together. So I'll have one student at a time share their screen, put up their answer to the question. As a group, we talk about what's working, what's not working, if you had anything different, what you would change. And then I kind of give like my answer to what I would have written there. And we go through 5 questions, 5 stations. And then at the end of that session, I assign more homework, which is then taken up in the next session the same way. Yeah, so it's a lot of like the last 2 sessions are more interactive, and you're able to kind of put an answer up and get feedback on it from the group. I record all the sessions. If you miss a session, you can still access the recordings. Yeah, that's generally how it works. Pricing for that, it's $170 to attend all 3 sessions and have all the course material. If you sign up with a friend, it's $135 each. Another question. Let me just see. Quick question about Casper. Is it too late to start now? It's not too late. You can message me. I have information about it on my Instagram, but I'll also send out after this meeting more information about that. I'll have it all in writing, and you can email me if you would like to sign up. No, it's not too late to sign up for the September course that starts September 5th. Is it a bad idea to disagree with or debate the question prompt, or do we accept the statement as true? For example, the second U of T prompt about thinking and feeling. Depends. It's not always wrong to disagree with the statement prompt. I think you definitely can do that. The best way to approach that is think about your story first. So what do you want to connect this idea to in your own personal experience or an activity that you've done, and then find a way to make that connection. If the connection is actually it's important to think, then sure, do that. But I think you're probably better off choosing a story that is like better aligned with the quote. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. We can talk about it in more depth if you like. I wouldn't disagree with it for the sake of disagreeing with it. And it's fine to say, I think you need to have both thinking and feeling and then give an example of it, but I wouldn't like disregard feeling, because that's obviously not what med schools are looking for. You need to be empathetic and be able to feel. So that is part of it. Okay. Cost of essay editing. Someone is asking, Yes, I can answer that. So let me just minimize this a little bit. You're going to see my millions of tabs. Okay, and I'm going to open my Instagram. Hopefully I don't have chats open. I definitely do. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm going to my price list. Okay, so this is my pricing for essay editing, if that's something you're interested in. This year I'm doing a tier system. So basically, if you are looking, all of these costs are per school. So it's if you want tier 1, it's $250 per school, and included in the first tier is one 30-minute brainstorming session via Zoom and 1 round of editing per school. Basically the way that works is you would send me your essays on a Google document. I would then edit them, doing a lot of using the track changes tool, lots of crossing out, me rewriting things, putting new things in. I will do as much editing as I possibly can in the first round to get your essay submission ready. The only thing I can't do in the first round is I cannot edit any new content that I request. So if I say, can you take this out and replace it with a story about, I can give you a little template for how I want that story to look. But if you're adding it in after the fact, obviously I can't address it in the first round. I also can't do a word or character count in the first round. I will keep the word or character count in mind and not add more content than can feasibly fit in your essay. But to do an exact count, you would have to accept all the changes first for me to go in and highlight the whole thing and figure out how many words we have. So if after the first round of editing, you decide that you are fine to cut the word count down on your own, there's not that much new content, then we can leave it there. If after that round you decide you want me to go back in for a second round, you can pay the difference to get to tier 2, which is the $200 difference. So, and then up until tier 4, which is kind of unlimited. So that's my price structure for this year. Let me go back to this. My application slides. There we go. Okay. Another question I have is, how would someone make up for a GPA lower than the median for Canadian or American schools? Tough question. Not much you can do. GPA is, yes, prices in Canadian dollars. I'm seeing another question. Yes, Canadian dollars. Make up for a GPA, very, very hard to do. You could do a master's degree and maybe just rely on the schools that do those nice weighting systems. If you have circumstances that kind of explain or account for your lower GPA in certain years, U of T and some other schools will let you make a case or write an academic explanation essay to explain why your GPA was lower in first year and why they should only consider your second year and beyond. That's something you can have open to you if you would like. But generally, other than doing a second undergrad, there's not much you can do to make up for a lower GPA. Any other questions?
I had a question about like general writing style. I don't know, like I think just like everyone else, I've watched like a bunch of videos, and then like you see these good examples, and sometimes they're like a little extra artistic or like whatever. They try to like have a hook in the beginning. So I was just wondering, like for the first, like I was just, do you have the page with
You want the good essay?
The structure one where you have like first paragraph?
Yes, this one. Yep.
Yeah. So from like the stuff that I saw, at least for dental, they were saying like you want to make sure that within the first or 2 sentences, at least you allude to something about dentistry. Like you don't want to waterboard them too much.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you agree with that, or is there a little bit of room to like kind of lead up to it?
I agree with that. I think the quicker you can get into the point you're writing the essay, the better, and address the question that they're asking, the better. In terms of a hook, that is more of an American thing than a Canadian thing, where you like, I definitely would not start with a quote from like Martin Luther King. That's like a very American cliche thing that I would not do. Or even like a quote from your own story, or like, you know, I was lying on the ground when I realized that my head was bleeding. Like I wouldn't do any of those things, especially for Canadian schools. You can kind of get away with it for American. But yeah, I would just like, if I'm starting the essay for a dental admissions essay, I would just say, kind of like through my experience shadowing dentists, I've been able to understand that, or even just jumping into your educational background shortly after it. The quicker you can get to the point, the better.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I'm looking in the chat. For U of T essays, do we explicitly mention their academic cluster qualities? Yes, is the short answer to that. You don't have to like have a checklist where you're using the exact wording all the time of all of their clusters, but they also kind of do have a checklist as far as I understand when they're marking the essays. So definitely keep them in mind and at least allude to them, if not mention them by name. Yeah, I would definitely consider that. Other question, would you edit optometry school essay for the states? Yes, I edit all things. So I've done like grad applications, even like grant applications or scholarship applications, any school that you're applying to, anything you need edited. Yes, can definitely edit that. Any other questions? Do you recommend writing the About Me essays for Western since they're optional? Good question. I will say in my past experience, about half of my students write them and half of them don't. And it doesn't really make that much of a difference if you get admitted to like the next stage or for interviews or not. If you have something good to write there and this is a chance for you to showcase that unique thing about yourself that doesn't really fit into the other categories, absolutely take the opportunity to write that. These are things like maybe you have a family member who has a disability and you were able to help them navigate the healthcare system, or maybe what are other good examples of this? Maybe you're involved in some kind of like outreach program that's more personal, or you had a friend go through something difficult and you were able to help them, obviously respecting confidentiality, something that like doesn't quite fit a resume activity, but is still impactful to who you are, or an experience that you had that taught you something that's notable. Definitely write it. If you don't have that, don't try to fit one in for the sake of it because it doesn't make a huge difference, I've found. So if you have it, use the space. If you don't have it, that's okay. Any other questions? See if I missed any in the chat. I think I have them all. All right, so thank you all for joining. That was great to get to sort of meet you and speak to you all. I will send out an email after this meeting just to send you the video and also send you the slides and update you about Casper or any other things that I have going on. Feel free to follow me on Instagram or message me there if you have any other questions, or by email. I'm going to put my information back up here just for a minute so you can see my email. And there you go. So I'm at EGMedPrep on Instagram. My email is emilyisaac@gmail.com. Maybe I'll also post it in the chat now, just so you guys can copy and paste it if you would like. But also you'll have it in a minute when I send you the other documents, and you probably have it from the Zoom link anyway. Yeah, so feel free to email me if you would like to set up an initial consultation for editing or for your essays. One quick thing that I'll mention about that is for all of the tiers for editing include at least one 30-minute consult, and you can decide which package works for you, or even if you want to sign up for a meeting or sign up for a package after that consult. So we can meet for 30 minutes, and if you decide you don't want me to edit your essays, that's totally fine. There's no charge. And then you can decide after the meeting which package you want to go with. All right, it was nice to meet you all, and hopefully I'll get to interact with you in some other form. See you soon, maybe. All right, bye. Thank you.